Come on, Ron.
Does anyone know about Mark Ridley Thomas, the supervisor of the 2nd District? Anyone know who he is? Okay, he founded the Empowerment Congress 19 years ago. Anyone hear of the Empowerment Congress? Okay, just had a meeting about a month ago. Had Kamala Harris out at USC. The model of his group is to educate, engage, and empower the community through that organization's activities. Lots of people talk about empowering the community. Few really attempt to do it, and even fewer actually succeed. And even worse, some that profess to empower the community actually act as barriers to community empowerment. And we're going to explore some of the limits of the community empowerment by talking about some of the content of my book, Compton4COPS, Community-Based Crime Fighting in Disadvantaged, Racially and Ethnically Diverse Urban Communities. But first, let's hit upon the education component of the Empowerment Congress, of the model. Historian Ashwa Kwesi, anybody ever hear of Ashwa Kwesi? He's the Egyptologist. He goes back and forth collecting the history of Egypt. And he said recently, if you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book. Mr. Kwesi's quote might also apply equally to some Latinos as well as African Americans. Last year, late last year, right before Christmas, 2 Centennial High 9th graders who happened to be Latino broke into and were caught inside the National Guard Armory right behind Centennial High School. That's where Sports Spectacular Jim Hawkins there houses these signs. And also we store the equipment there for the youth programs. The place was vandalized, several tools were stolen, and racial hate words were graffitied on the wall and over several signs used for the Wall of Shame. Now, he tried, but the sign of Compton, you can see where they actually wrote the red paint on the sign there. The signs are used to memorialize the 3,000 people who have been murdered within LA County over the past 3 years. And since 2001, there have been 409 murders in Compton. And about 23 to 25% of what the sheriff considers clear, that means there was an arrest made and possibly somebody was submitted to the DA and prosecuted for that crime, which means that out of 409, there's still 300 people or murderers possibly walking the streets of Compton. And already, as mentioned earlier, there's 6 people have been killed in Compton, and some within a mile radius of where we're sitting right now. But nevertheless, these 9th graders were escorted back to Centennial. We chose not to call the police on them. We chose to escort them back to the school, and we met with the principal. She looked up their record and discovered that they were chronically truant, were failing. And so we made an agreement with them that they would become part of the teen intervention program that we run to help them with character building if we got their parent permission. I believe that Mr. Kwesi's quote would apply equally to these 2 vandals. They denied writing this hate message. It said, "I hate niggers." And hate was spelled with an H and the letter and the number 8. Now, the LA Times recently reported that 1/2 the people within Compton over 25 don't have high school diplomas. We also know that only 4 in 10 of the Compton Unified School District students actually graduate from high school. So what kind of a behavior can we expect from stupid people? Yes, and I'm calling anyone who's over 25 or under 25 who does not have a high school diploma stupid and a potential burden on our community. And clearly, without some kind of intervention, these 2 9th graders are headed toward becoming even more of a menace to the Compton community. The education system has failed them. The church and family institutions are failing them. And the question I have is this: are the civic institutions also failing them? What municipal institutions exist within Compton to possibly help build character among these 2 young guys? How does the policing plan to resurrect the Compton PD address the problems of disaffected youth? What are the plans for addressing the needs of victims of crime like Sports Spectacular? Or the friends and families of the over 300 murder victims from which there have been no arrests? How will these people ever find closure? In other words, what services for victims of crimes exist within Compton? My book was written expressly for the people of Compton to dialogue about policing in this city. Please note that the last time I checked, my book was ranked number 4,885,000 on the Amazon.com bestseller list. So obviously I didn't go into this to make any money. It'll never be a New York Times bestseller, and it won't be on Oprah's reading list. But the intent was for us to discuss among ourselves the policing styles and options that are available to us as a community, and to create for ourselves what we believe might work best for our city. For example, page 5 of the book stresses the fact that both black and brown people support police reform. By reform, I mean a style of policing that is tailored toward meeting the specific needs of the Compton community based on the needs identified by community members. All of them, not just a few of them. The only way to achieve this result is by talking with and not at community members. Has anyone here been asked about their thoughts and views on the policing needs for Compton? Anyone been asked? Until now, much of the policing discussion has been about numbers and the cost of replicating sheriff law enforcement service. Why would anyone even want to try that? This is the organization that's been in existence for 100 years and got a $2 billion budget. Why would you try to replicate what they've done? Silly. How does the policing department under development meet the expressed needs of the Compton community? See pages 5, 7, and 53. Why is the entire police department development process not open to full public view and discussion, such as what occurred in Citrus Heights up north? How will the new police department help the community members feel safer, less fearful, and improve their quality of life? For example, we just got to talking about prostitution, a long Beach Boulevard that's been there forever. I bet that joblessness, inferior education, illegal drugs, and street violence are also an integral part of that problem. We know that murders cluster around Long Beach Boulevard and Laundry. All you gotta do is look at the murder map. Matter of fact, there's one in the back you can take with you. That area also has a lot of street prostitution. How does the resurrected Compton PD plan to address the prostitution problem? Past practices of arresting prostitutes simply do not work, but deterring Johns does. What would the new Compton PD do differently than what it did before, or what the sheriff is doing right now? How will the chronic complaints of disrespect from sheriff deputies change? What will mitigate the questionable police shootings, such as the citizens being shot 12 times in the back? How will a bridge of police-citizen trust be built? What policing service improvements can we expect? What's the point if there is no improvement and no change? Pages 81 through 87 gives information on prostitution and what can be done about it. Other parts of the book show what other cities have done to reduce gun violence and gang problems. We look at what has worked and what has not worked. Distrust among police is a huge problem. I think we kind of getting the symptoms of that listening to the conversation tonight, particularly among young people. Remember the NWA developed that seminal rap song, "Fuck the Police," right here in Compton. Anyone that regularly attends these meetings knows that distrust is a problem, which begs the question, how can the police department come online that is not intimately involved and knowledgeable about the community problems identified at these meetings? What is the Compton PD or sheriff plan for building trust among the Compton community members? Or do they even think that trust is important? Page 147 talks about growing trust in so-called minority communities. Many solutions are proposed in the book. For example, neighborhood governance, cultural training programs to teach people who may be new to your community what they need to expect and what laws they need to abide by, what ordinances they need to abide by. New types of police officers. I think we kind of hint upon that today in some of the discussion. I'm talking about something different than what we used to have. And particularly, I heard a gentleman back there talk about getting out of the box. He's talking about a new type of policing. Total quality management as a means of achieving customer satisfaction with the policing effort. Now, TQM focuses on customer or resident satisfaction and attempts to answer the question no one ever asked us: how are we doing? Page 169 speaks specifically about requirements for changing or starting a new police department. What is between the covers of my book do not have to remain hidden. If we are to speak of empowerment, what better place to make it reality than with policing in so-called minority communities such as Compton? To do so will require that we first, like we're doing tonight, engage ourselves and by talking and listening to each other as we identify our community priorities, which in turn is a prerequisite to education. Once we do these two things, we are ready to act and indeed empower ourselves to make Compton a safer community. We don't need the Empowerment Congress for us to take control of our own community. Now, on some of the seats you see excerpts. These are from excerpts from the book that I've written here that talks about some of the things, including the prostitution that we talked about tonight. And one of the things that's worked successfully in Chicago is posting John's pictures on the internet, in the newspaper. The way you deter Johns is this: because they don't want to see, their family members can see their picture, their employers can see their picture. What do you think is going to happen if it's well known that Johns coming to Compton are going to end up on a billboard in full public view? So much of the discussion tonight has been targeting prostitutes, but actually prostitutes is the lowest part of the sex trade. It's only 20% of it. It's just that it clusters here in Compton. But the focus is continually arrest these women who already automatically build this into what they do. They know they're going to get arrested. They know how long they're going to be there. So they build this in. That's why they're able to come right back onto the street and do it again. It's all a part of the routine. So the focus on them is nonsense. But when you read what I've given you there, it shows the bigger problem. A lot of them, like just been mentioned here before, have financial issues. They got child care issues. They got health, physical and mental health issues. They need other than just to be locked up in jail. And I heard someone allude to the fact there is a program that probably needs to be built on a lot more. The churches, everyone need to become involved. But again, you can take this with you. It's the excerpt from the book for those of you who do not want it. But if you do want the book, for Nature members it's $12. For non-Nature members it's $15. Either way, it's a discount. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ron. That was an excellent speech on community policing. And this meeting is about education. I think we're getting education, and one reason